Another episode of Business and Life Stories with James and Mike. We're sponsored by Capital Finders. And with us this week is Stephen English of Austin, Texas. He's recently had a TedX talk, which is getting quite a lot of attention. And welcome, Steve.
Hey, thank you so much, Mike and James.
Hi, Steve.
Glad to be here.
You were going to talk to us tonight about what you've done in the past and what you're doing now. So you're currently a coach, but that's not what you started out with, is it?
No, not at all. In fact, I was one of those kids that everybody hated for his math skills. I was the kid that was always able to learn the trigonometry, the calculus, and all of the above in high school, and was tutoring the cheerleaders, although that didn't really help me out with them. And I graduated from high school I was the first kid to get the Math and Science Award, which basically made sense that I was a big nerd, right? So that branded me as like giant nerd side on me. And then I went off to Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute in Troy, New York, and got a physics degree. And then I found out that you really can't get a job with a physics degree, or at least that's what they told me, except one guy went off to Wall Street, and I'm sure that he's 10x'd my net worth by now. However, and I think he was doing like quantitative analysis or something. And then I decided to go down to North Carolina State and get a material science degree. So 22 years in the semiconductor industry, all in quality and reliability. So if you look at your phone and go, wow, why is it that the only thing on this thing that breaks is the screen and the battery? Well, you can thank a reliability nerd like me, because I made sure that the ICs, the integrated circuits inside of it, lasted 10 years. And then just to cut to 2018, I started changing my career, and that's how I ended up as a coach and a trainer today. I mean, there's a big gap in there, but I think we'll talk about that. But yeah, I'm currently I've been running my own small coaching and training company. It's just me, the classical solopreneur thing.
So how did you make that transition? I mean, that is a huge change. You must have had to learn some of the soft skills, which James and I went through that as well. And I'm still learning.
Yeah.
How did you do that?
Yeah. Well, it's funny because there were glimpses of it all across my career. I remember in 2003, I was at a company called ST Microelectronics, and they said, you know what, we want you to teach effective presentation skills. And I had really no idea why. And I still, to this day, I don't know why they chose me. And I tried to find the guy who was over what they called ST University at the time to say, how did you guys pick me? And there was just something all throughout my career that was just shot through with this soft skills training. So whether it was effective presentation skills, and then it turned into teaching effective meeting skills, I just found myself magnetized to it. And then when I look at all the times that I actually enjoyed my job, it was really about helping the team members, right? Because very quickly after getting into those early roles, like really I was an individual contributor only for a handful of the years of those 22 years. Really, the alpha and the omega, the beginning and the end of my career, I was an individual contributor. But in the beginning, they put me in charge of people, and I really enjoyed the process of getting them from good to great, or from just in the door to, wow, they're incredibly useful and they love their job. They love parts of their job. Granted, they won't all love their jobs. But that was the part of the job that I really loved. And what happened was, when I hit my midlife crisis, I doubled down on the alcohol, like so many people do. And I started to have a bunch of consequences for my alcoholism. And at some point, the pain was incredibly strong, and I started to make changes. And I just decided to try things out. I really experimented. And the first experiment was October 2018, when I found my first couple of coaching clients. And then I went off and I went to coaching school. I got a certification. And then in December of 2018, I got my first client for presentation skills. I taught a class at a small company here in downtown Austin. That's kind of the beginning of it.
What was that transition like mentally, making that shift and making that emotional shift?
Scary as hell. It was almost like I was having to kill who I used to be.
Mm.
Because I had, well, I remember when I was contemplating career change, there was one of my mentors. He said, you have a long suit. Your long suit is this, engineering. And I was talking to him about, well, going into sales or going into something different. He's like, well, that's what they've paid you for. You've been well paid for it. You've been doing it long enough where they you're sought after, you have a reputation. And so I basically had to kill that reputation. And it was scary as hell.
Sounds risky.
Yeah, it was risky, but it came down to, and that's what's funny about a midlife crisis, right? You basically can either stay on the path that you're on and try to find coping mechanisms for the potential pain that you might be going through. I think Joseph Campbell said it best. He said, was it the greatest tragedy in life is getting to the top of the ladder and realizing you're on the wrong wall.
Well said.
And that was really where my life was. Like I was miserable. Like if I had to put another, acceleration factor calculation into an Excel table, I was going to blow my brains out. Like I just was so much, like it just didn't do it for me anymore. And so yeah, it was scary as hell. And I looking at my finances, and just like many other folks who are at the beginning of a career transition, and I said, can I do it? And so I just started running experiments. So there I was in 2018, still employed by the corporate America. I was working for a company called Cirrus Logic, wonderful company here in Austin, Texas. And I was in my free time starting my coaching and training business.
So how did you get your first couple clients? Was it through LinkedIn, word of mouth?
All of the above. So I'll tell you the first one was through LinkedIn on the coaching side. So what I did was, I can't remember exactly what was in the post, but it was a simple like image that I just typed words on and said, hey, I'm going to, I'm studying to be a coach. Would anybody like to be coached by me? I'm looking for 4 people. And I got 2 responses. And they were both people that knew me. So that goes to show, right? People hire folks that they know, trust, and like. And so those were the first 2. And I mean, the pay was incredibly low, but it was just like, I had to prove to myself, like, well, I had to see, it wasn't even prove to myself. It was like, I had to see, like, do I like doing this? And ultimately this was one of those, and for anybody who's read the book, The Big Leap by Gay Hendricks, Gay Hendrick, he doesn't have an S at the end. He talks about there's your zone of incompetence, your zone of competence, your zone of excellence, and your zone of genius. So I had to test and see if this whole coaching thing was in my zone of genius. So that's how I got the first coaching people, the first 2 clients there. The presentation skills training class was, I found them through Toastmasters. Now they actually found me. So really funny story. I hear a kitty cat.
Yeah, mine. Also.
Okay, I was like, funny story. Here's a cat. I was reached out to by another club, and they said, hey, we want to come visit your club at Cirrus Logic. And so I investigated and said, hey, can we bring guests in? And Human Resources said no. And so I had to go back to her and say, hey, you can't visit our club, but I'd be more than happy to help you find another club, or I can help you create a club. But then there was this thought that was really related to me writing a goal on my whiteboard right next to me, which was start a training company by 2020. And so I wrote that on that board, and somewhere deep in my my brain because of the reticular activating system, I said to her, what is it that you hope will happen as a result of you coming and visiting our Toastmasters Club? And she said, I have a few people here that I want to help improve their public speaking. And so just like in a split second, I said, would you be open to me coming there and teaching a class? I won't charge you anything. All I want is testimonials and to be able to use your logo on my website. She said, let me check it out. She comes back. Anyway, long story, not so much longer. They ended up paying me at 50% of my, what I consider to be my fair rate. And it was scary. And I walked out of there feeling like I totally screwed everything up. And then I started getting text messages from her saying that it was amazing. And then most of the people loved it.
Brilliant.
Now,
Brilliant.
have you experienced that same principle in your public speaking, your TEDx talk, and so on, where it seems like, at least for James and I, when we do any kind of public speaking or negotiation even, we feel like if we come out of there feeling like we totally lost it, when we were horrible, is when we tended to do our best work. I don't know what that is about our brains.
And that's a great question. I don't really know what it is about that feeling after the fact. The only thing that I can think of is that there's times when you speak and you're completely improvisational, and because you didn't over prepare and you didn't really think it through in deep detail, sometimes you look at it and go, how could that have gone well? I don't even remember what I said. And I had that happen on another stage. The TEDx one was very scripted, but I had that happen on another stage that I recently did. And I got to speak for 5 minutes and I sat back down and I go, what the did I say? What did I say? And I just knew the general structure. I knew the general framework of what it is that I was, and I remembered like the first line and my conclusion, but like everything in the middle, I have some ideas of what I might have said. But so that might be it, is that like we almost go into this like blackout, and then we ask ourselves, how could that have gone well if we didn't over prepare? But the thing is that, whatever age you are, I don't know, you're 39, right, Mike?
Yeah, that was a while ago.
Yeah, we're all 39 here, right? So it's taken us 39 years to get wherever we are, and we've got all that experience. So that has been our prep. So I don't know. That's a great question. I don't really know what the real science is behind that, but that's just, if I had to make a swag, a swinging wild ass guess, it would just be that we didn't over prepare. So we think, how could it have gone well?
So tell us about your TEDx talk.
Yeah.
How did that come about?
Yeah, that was really, that was a lot of fun. And how did that come about? I think about a bunch of years ago, I'm trying to remember how many years ago I saw Julian Treasure, I saw Amy Cuddy, I saw Brené Brown, all on TED. And I mean, when I say saw them, I saw them on the computer, and I said to myself, that I really, really want to do, because there's something about moving people, like being able to move a person emotionally on such scale. It's one thing to be standing in there in a Toastmasters meeting. It's another thing to be standing there in a classroom setting where you maybe have 50 people. It's a whole other game when you have thousands and thousands of people watching you, and ultimately millions of people watching you. So I found that to be really fascinating. And it was always like a true north for me. And it was, again, up on the whiteboard, right? Start a training company, do a TED talk, write a book. And I haven't written the book yet. So then what happened was I saw another coach who I had been following for a long time on Facebook. He had a partner in his business that was doing TEDx coaching. So I ended up hiring her, and I went through a coaching program to get on a stage. And of course they don't shoehorn you into the stage. You have to do all the heavy lift yourself. And so it was a lot of networking. It was a lot of talking to organizers, reaching out to organizers. And of course, you don't get in a lot of conversations because there's a moat almost. There's like a big wall, in terms of, they've got a website or they've got a Facebook page. And, it's not like you're just talking to them about your big idea. And in parallel, actually, prior to even getting into conversations or applying for the stage, I crafted the speech. And the speech for me was one that I said I had to quit corporate America to even do this speech. And because I knew that if anybody saw it, I would just be getting judged for how raw and vulnerable I got. So, I mean, how did it come about? I set it as a goal, and I broke it down into little small steps, and I applied and I got on. Now, that said, it was a virtual stage thanks to this global endemic. But I'm going to apply again, and I'm going to get on another, stage and be, present in a TEDx event. And that's my next goal.
So any thoughts on the title of the next speech? Getting the first one is quite an accomplishment, and getting two is really rare.
I don't even know. I mean, I would say this, it's going to have the three elements, where it's going to have to be concise. It's going to have some polarization in it, and it's going to have to be relevant. And so the title of my first one, and I talk about it like it's been so long. It's actually only 3 weeks out there in the interwebs. So it's still pretty green. It was finding joy by disappointing others. And it's got that twist to it. So it's got the concise, right? It's nice and short. It's got some polarity, right? Because I've got joy, disappointment, all in the same sentence. And then as far as the relevance is concerned, I mean, it's about people pleasing and alcoholism. And I can say that based upon my own conversations with people, and also I did a little LinkedIn poll about people pleasing. It's pretty prevalent. So, yeah. As far as the second one is concerned, I don't know, man. I mean, who knows? Maybe I'll do something around career change, because here we are. They say this is what the Great Resignation. They say for the next 18 months or so, they think that there's going to be a lot of churn in the job market. So maybe it'll be something around career transitions and doing what you love.
I think that'd be really strong, and couple that with your coaching business.
Yeah.
Going from, rental areas are really, we do have a lot of international listeners. So as I mentioned, that is a very high level, hard to get into technical school. It's very, very competitive to get in there. So especially anybody graduating from there with a physics degree we're talking major brain power. So thank you for talking to us, because
no, come on, man. What are you kidding? Yeah, it's really now just our RPI is so overpriced now. I can't even send my kids there. I'd have to rob some banks or something. But
yeah, my college did that too. So
yeah,
I think some kind of combination of you made that transition into coaching, and then it was such a powerful TED talk. Now, how did as a trained material scientist and trained physics guy, you knew all the logic behind the chemistry of alcohol and what's going on. So none of that helps you break the addiction, right? So what really broke it for you?
Oh man, that's another real zinger, man. I wish I knew it was one thing. I think what it came down to was just seeing that it didn't work anymore, right? Like it wasn't doing what it sought to do, which was, to kind of escape, relieve your pain, but then it just kept creating more pain. And, as one of the things that I mentioned in my TED talk was, I couldn't lower my standards fast enough, because I was, and the let's say the consequences were coming up faster than I could lower my own standards in life. Right. Like it was literally, It's funny. The last time I wore state-sponsored bracelets made of stainless steel was in actually June of 2014, and it took me another 2 years to finally figure it out enough to say, you know what, this is it. I'm done. But that's not even the first time that I started to look at recovery. Like I went into the rooms of recovery in 2012, but it was just, you know, I had to want it for the right reasons. I had to want it 100% for me. I guess that's what it really comes down to. And I was talking to a coaching client about it today, who is going exactly through this same thing. Although she's been blessed by not having any, you know, charges, no negative consequences that are in that kind of legal spot. But in my case, it was, those consequences were pretty strong. And then eventually I couldn't do it for that reason. I had to do it for me. And August 29th, 2016, it was the day I was like handing bottles of tequila and vodka to my girlfriend and saying, please take this from me. Please get rid of this. And you know, it took what it took, right? It took consequences. It took me recognizing that it wasn't working for me. It took me seeing that there could be something better for me on the other side of it. And eventually I took action.
So it's really inspiring to me to hear this, because I know we've talked about a little bit before. When I first met you and I heard you speak, and you come across like a guy that should be running a multi-billion-dollar company.
Oh, I appreciate that.
Finding out the human being behind that was really great. And it's like, wow. And I think most people have a lot more confidence in coaches that have been through stuff. And you know, that speaks a lot. I know James has been through a lot, and I'm sure he'll be jumping in here with questions soon. So are you still are you doing mountain biking? Is that what I heard?
That's my activity of choice. It was funny. I used to come home from work, ride my mountain bike, and then go drinking, and it still it didn't matter. It didn't matter how.
Word.
Yeah, and in fact, I used to, you know, thank God for the statute of limitations. I mean, I used to drink and ride my bike. I mean, not on mountain bike trails, but just around the neighborhood. I mean, it was stupid. I put a beer can in my water bottle cage. I mean, it was just, man, it was out of control. And you know, I do appreciate the you know, the positive feedback there, and you know, I'm just as trite and as cliche as it sounds nowadays, because the word authenticity has just been completely diluted. I just want to share my real story, because what I've found is that there's a lot of people who have gone through the stuff I've gone through. I've gone through divorce. I've gone through obesity. I've gone through career change. I've gone through, you know, the alcoholism. I've gone through, you know, all kinds of fun stuff, you know, and there's a lot of people out there who want help, and I want to be able to share what I can, you know, as we say in some of the rooms of recovery, right? Share our experience, strength, and hope, because there's a lot of hope out there.
Over to you, James.
Yeah,
Should I tell the skiing story again? I do this almost every episode. No. Okay.
No, I find it it's sort of interesting how as human beings we try to avoid pain at all costs, but to reach a greater level we delve into pain and get out of our depth. But that's sort of the only way when we come to look back in the rear mirror. It's a very interesting journey, isn't it?
I'm trying to remember. There's a great quote from Carl Jung about that. Neurosis is the natural byproduct of pain avoidance. I think that's the one I I just pulled up. I was
Yeah.
quickly pulling. Yeah, I think that sometimes avoiding pain by avoiding, and actually kind of goes back to something I was telling one of my clients about today. So sometimes avoiding the pain, the acute pain, gives us just a lifetime of dull pain. And I said to her, because her background is, she's got a pretty financy numbersy kind of background. And I said to her, I said, well, think about the integral, the area under the curve, right? I said, you can have a small amount of pain for a long time. If your x-axis is time and your y-axis is pain, and you integrate under the curve, and you're at a dull one level, like level one pain, like a 1 through 10 thing, and you ride that out for a long time. Wouldn't you prefer to have just like a high amount of pain for a short period of time, and then not have pain at all? So yeah, like in my case, and in many people's cases, right? Like if you run right at it and you deal with it, then yes, it's going to hurt temporarily. May take that 15 minutes of courage, but on the other side, life will be much better.
I think it's almost that we obviously create our own pain, and it's sort of interesting. It's like, how far can we step into it?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I once read an interview, really interesting article by an ultra runner,
Mm-hmm.
and she described her coach used to talk about a pain cave. And I thought, wow, like, how far can you walk into that cave knowing that you will come out the other side? But it's not everyone can. There's a lot of people who, as you said, maybe numb the pain or have a low level.
Mm-hmm.
But it's very interesting how the deeper you go in that pain cave, the deeper the insights come.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think you mentioned that, most people don't go beyond a certain level of pain. I think it was David Goggins I was reading in his book, can't hurt. I think it's Can't Hurt Me. Yeah. He says that most people like they have 40% more. Like when we think that we can't go any further, there's actually 40% more in our tank. And I'm no ultra marathoner, honestly. Like I've just started back at a new fitness routine, and I'm having to run, and I feel it, man. I'm glad you brought up the pain cave, because I'm going to remember that tomorrow morning when I'm on the damn treadmill at 6:45 a.m. I'm going to go, I'm in the cave. But yeah, there's a lot of insight in that. There's a lot of you learn a lot about yourself. In fact, yeah, that's like sometimes when I even on that treadmill there at the Orange Theory Fitness, I get on that thing, and I start thinking, like, I hate all these people in this room. They all suck. And I realize that that's just the manifestation of the physical pain. Like none of these people have done anything to really make me mad. I'm just hurting. My legs hurt. I'm tired. I want to get off the damn treadmill. But yeah, you and then you recognize, you're like, that's just me projecting something. It's not true. It's not true.
It's sort of interesting how the greater levels of transformation are deeper in that pain cave.
Yeah.
So
why is that?
I actually think, I mean, my gut feeling is that it's part of our DNA to it is an initiation, and it's like back in the day, and the tribes may still do, but teenage initiation was crucial for the survival of the tribe, to pass the skills on, and also to weed out the teenagers who wouldn't be able to kind of make it, or to toughen everyone up. And yeah, and I read another article how it was through that intense physical pain that it kind of rattled out any psychological issues too. It was kind of a shakedown. And of course, for what, 200-300 years or maybe more, the Western world, no one, a tiny percentage, probably no one puts their teenage, particularly sons, through an initiation. We would all be locked away for child abuse. And yet we then, it's almost like that the midlife crisis comes along, so we have that opportunity to gain the higher understanding, and it's like you can't get away from it. And it's like, how am I going to, how much do I want to grab hold of that midlife crisis? Like, is it a little inconvenience and I'm not really going to explore it? Or do I really want to go down there? Do I really want to drink myself to a point, overwork myself to a point, drug myself out to a point, do whatever I can to a point, knowing that when that point is reached, then there's something beyond that. And Joseph Campbell, The Hero's Journey, it's fascinating, and I've experienced that, and it's a self-initiation, and it's like, how much am I prepared to do? Like David Goggins, how much am I prepared to endure, walk through, embrace that pain? Because within me, I know there's something on the other side. And when do I tap out?
Yeah, there's a lot of great stuff in there to unpack. I think there's, maybe part of why there is a midlife crisis is because there really is no initiation. It's just like our adolescence is just this extended thing where, maybe, I don't know. That's a great point. I don't have a lot of insight around that. I can tell you this, maybe for the folks who decide to just double down on the more work, more alcohol, more drugs, more whatever, instead of making the pivot, the change happens when the pain is greater than the gain, and they haven't had enough pain, and they're kind of sitting there in their, lavish home, and there's the wife is just unhappy enough, and they're just unhappy enough, and the kids are just unhappy enough, but not too much, and there's just not enough pain, and then maybe there's not enough vision inside of the person of like what life could be like. So it kind of makes me think of a couple of different quotes that I love. Is so Michael Beckwith, who's a spiritualist, he said, pain pushes until the vision pulls. And so that's that. I think if you don't have a lot of pain, right? So there's not a lot of push. And then if you have no vision, then there's no movement. But if you have a lot of pain, and then eventually if you have some vision, then it's going to move you. And then the other one that comes to mind, and I mess this quote up almost every single time I do this, like on a podcast, is the Gospel of Thomas. There's a quote in there. It says, if you bring forth what is within you will save you. If you do not bring forth what is within you, what you do not bring forth will destroy you. And I read that one in a book on midlife, and it was so appropriate. I remember reading it and I was like, holy cow, that's me. That's me. I had something inside of me, which was the training, which was the people skills. It was the soft skills, the relating to other people and all of that I had to bring out. or else it was just going to destroy me. I was just going to be miserable, putting numbers into spreadsheets and filling out, evaluation forms for new product qualifications and this, that, and the other thing for the next 20 years of my life until I retired, and I said, I mean, for lack of a better term, F that, right? Like, I'm not going to do this. But yeah, you bring up a great point, James, about the initiation and where that is, like where that pain and the initiation and kind of shaking out it's a real shakeout psychologically. Yeah, that's a great thought.
Because, I mean, for me, I can only talk from a male perspective, right? But I would say that it's very hard for us to step up to our next level without having some sort of crisis.
Yeah.
And I think one of the greatest misdeeds or the greatest misinformations is the fact that children and adults are brought up with the notion that you should go for the perfect life, that you should avoid pain at all costs.
Yeah.
And the more pain I've experienced in my life, the closer I've got to wanting to tap out and go, oh man, like, it's a misjustice to have been brought up with the impression that I should avoid that.
That's interesting you mentioned that. I remember both my grandparents' generation had a totally different attitude.
Yeah.
They were first generation Americans, so they came from Europe, and it was like they were leaving because things were perfect in Europe, right? No. They'd already experienced a lot of problems, so the alternative was to sail across the ocean. And they got here, and I wouldn't say they embraced their pain, but it's just like it was just a fact of life.
Yeah.
And then I remember as I'm growing up, I went through public schools, and we were always told, like, don't make waves, don't cause trouble, don't draw attention, don't. So just what you're saying, James. I think that dovetails really well with Steve's coaching business too. Don't you have people sometimes as your clients that maybe they're embracing the wrong pain, or they get that letter on the wrong wall, and you're trying to.
Oh man, before we go there, I just, what you were saying, just this idea about like hard life, it was making me search for a quote, and I don't know if it's the only one that I've ever heard. I'm sure that this guy is standing on shoulders of giants, so to speak. Hard times create strong men create good times create weak men, and weak men create hard times. So it's G. Michael Hopf, Those Who Remain, his book, Those Who Remain. I don't know if he's that sounds like it was somebody else, but yeah, that it's interesting how there's this cyclical nature to generations, and I just wonder, like, what is it that is going to, if there's going to be a shift, right? Like God forbid we have anything calamitous like what made the greatest generation, so to speak. My grandfather, your grandfathers, but maybe, yeah, that's how we do make strong men, strong women, right? As for the coaching, and that's an interesting segue. People enduring pain, and the wrong pain. Well, that comes down to values, right? What is the wrong pain? The wrong pain is things. Those are things that are out of alignment with what we truly value. And so for people who, let's say, for example, you're working hard at a job that you're not engaged in, you're not passionate about, you're not excited about, then that's the wrong kind of pain. If, for example, like those of us who are solopreneurs or entrepreneurs, I can work 14-hour days at things that I really love, and it's not bad pain because I'm working on things that I deeply value. So I think that's one of the key things. I mean, I help people with career transitions. I help people in executive roles work on their communication style. I help people really. It is also funny that people will come to me for one thing and then actually be coached on a whole other thing once they get real. I had one person come to me and she was saying, "Oh, I want to create more work-life balance," and it's like all these kind of like fluffy things. I'm like, okay, all right. And then we start to find out there's some alcoholism and some addictive behaviors and things like that. And then we go there, and then we're working on changing habits. So really it runs the spectrum. There's like what you put on the storefront in terms of what you market with. I market for introverted leaders. I help introverted leaders because there's a lot of stuff around communication and confidence and handling difficult, other difficult people and things like that. Managing up, managing down. Those are the types of challenges that I talk about in terms of my marketing message. But then I get people who, they a whole, as long as they know, like, and trust you, and they feel that you can help them, they'll hire me.
I think that's you bring up an interesting point, and I love these deeper discussions. There's a point there about pain, the difference between pain and suffering. And there's bound to be lots of philosophical definitions and spiritual, and but it's really a matter of perception. I mean, I think so. I mean, what I might call a pain, another person might call suffering. And it's an interesting thing, isn't it? Like, can we get the same transition through suffering, or because we all know that there's like for me, it's a mind shift between suffering and pain. Like, it's the shift of going from a victim and suffering to having a responsibility and accepting and almost embracing the pain, and then it flips. And I think that's a very interesting thing about people's journey. It sort of goes back to that concept which we were talking about a little bit earlier on about low-level pain versus maybe high-level. It's maybe the suffering comes from dragging things on.
Yeah.
Whereas it's us just sort of paddling around in the front of the pain cave. Whereas if we put the rucksack on and go straight into it, it's like, right, here we go.
Yeah. Well, as soon as you said pain versus suffering, the first thing that came to mind was, pain is inevitable, suffering is optional, and maybe when we're suffering, we can make a different choice. We can take a different choice, and maybe, and then even with pain, like in some cases, we, just like a runner does, just like, the ultra marathoner, or the person going mountain biking, or the person doing weightlifting. And it doesn't have to be physical pain. It also could be emotional pain, having those very difficult conversations with a loved one. Those may be very useful, and they may align with what the person deeply values. Whereas the suffering could be maybe almost needless. Like, it could, all they have to do is make a courageous choice, and they could eliminate it. But yeah, it's a great distinction, and I'm a big fan of distinctions. Like you were talking about, maybe like somebody who's in a victim, maybe victim versus creator, victim versus owner, victim versus victor, whatever you want to call it. And that's a mind shift. That truly is a mind shift. And that was something that I've really had to step into. When you're working in corporate America, it's really easy to jump into victim, because
very,
there's always somebody to blame above you. And you're living at the effect of life as opposed to at the cause of life, and which is what a creator does, right? A creator or an owner of their life, they're at the cause of life. And when you step into business ownership, you really, I mean, if you play victim for too long, you're gonna sink.
Oh yeah, yeah. And we tell our listeners and our clients that frequently. You have to, and we have to. We all, any business owner has to own the concept, and it has to be a reality that we're there to. It sounds very cliche, but we're there to give value. We're there to bring something unique to us, to our clients, and then they need to do the same thing for their clients and their customers, is bring something that's unique to them. So the giving life concept, as you say, super important. So do you have anything in particular you want to share with our listeners? A few final thoughts. When is the next TEDx talk? I know it's not scheduled yet, but how do they get on your mailing list? And
if you go to www.stevenenglish.net, that's my webpage. There's a contact me button there. I also, you know what? I'm going to have to add that I actually just recently paid for Linktree, and Linktree is really cool because it goes, and I wish I had like a really cool Linktree thing. I guess mine's Stephen English 512. So, but there's no like link.tree.com. I have to look it up real quick. And I'm on Linktree, and I have let's see, I have it. Oh, look at that. Yeah, it's link.
okay. So we'll put those links down.
Yeah, we'll put, you can put them in the show notes, and on there I have a 15-minute free call. So if anybody just wants to jump on a call with me, and for whatever reason, I've left it up there ever since the TEDx first dropped, and I haven't had so many people coming to me that I decided to pull it down. Right, like it was funny. I was telling my coach about it. I said, hey, I put this thing up there, and if all of a sudden there's like 1,000 people who want to have 15 minutes of my time, then I'll pull it down. But I haven't had that quote unquote problem yet, and I would welcome the problem, quite frankly. So that, if anybody wants to just jump on a quick call with me, connect with me on LinkedIn. LinkedIn is my jam. I post there daily. So that's really where I hang out. And so if you're a LinkedIn user, come get in the water with me. The water's warm. Love to understand, what kind of challenges anyone in your listening space is running into, and seeing how I could be of service or just provide some value. I often put up little like, hey, I've got this ebook. Does anybody want it? Kind of posts. I just put one together on confidence. So if anybody wants an ebook on confidence.
Well, so I think we could all use more of that, definitely.
Oh yeah, I tell you what, it's for anybody who has to do any sales. Oh my goodness, confidence is so key. Anybody who has got to get up and do any kind of public speaking, confidence is so key. In fact, it's funny. This week I went and circled back to a client that had given me a no, and I did a downsell to her, and sure enough, she bought it, and I thought to myself, why didn't I do that from the start? And so, it's all just confidence. And so that's why I harp on it. And since I help introverted leaders, I think confidence is something that they really, really need, just like I really, really need. So that's why I talk about it.
That's really good advice. James and I both used to be massive introverts, and individually we ran into people who had been introverts and weren't, and they showed no sign of it anymore. By the time we met them, we're like, how are you doing that? And that was the same thing. They had to learn how to be confident.
Yeah, well, and the thing that it's funny about confidence is that we actually gain it by taking action and proving to ourselves that thing that we used to fear, confidence and fear, they're all tied together. That thing that we used to fear, there's really not much to fear. And yeah, it's a push. In some cases, it's kind of like the Mel Robbins, 5-second rule, right? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and just jump. Pick up the phone. Sometimes this little phone of ours, it feels like it's 1,000 pounds when we have to call that person and make that offer. But yeah, it's really a great journey. I've been having a lot of fun with it. Today it's so powerful to have like these old relationships. I had a guy that I spoke to today. I'd known him since 1999, and sure enough, there's opportunity for coaching and he's in a leadership position at his company. So I have so much fun, getting on calls with folks and seeing, how can I be of service like right then? Not how can I sell this thing to you and then be of service later, but how can I help you right now?
That's a good title for this episode. Can I borrow that?
Absolutely. How can I help you right now? Oh, it's been a blast, man. James is bringing the depth, man. I'm going to go into that pain cave tomorrow morning and I'll be thinking of you, my friend.
James is very deep, and whenever our forthcoming 800-page book is ready, you can read lots of James stories. He is very, very deep. All right, James, you want to take us out?
Thank you so much, Stephen. I love the deeper side of things. So it's been an absolute pleasure. And talking about pain, a contradiction, but it's been an absolute blast to talk about pain.
Exactly. We've had so much fun talking about pain this evening.
And thank you so much. And we'll put all your links and handles and whatnot in the show notes. And there we go, Mike. Another awesome chat and interview. Thank you so much, Stephen.
Awesome blossom. Thank you so much.